window glass on the 24th floor is always cold at 3 in the morning. I press my forehead against the pane, feeling the sharp chill seep into my skin. Insomnia reduces the city to a distant, luminous geometry. Down below, the streetlights form a strict grid of yellow dots. Moving headlights carve slow lines through the dark. I'm entirely disconnected from it, suspended in a high-altitude vacuum. I know this specific slice of the skyline. I have stared at it for over 400 consecutive, sleepless nights. I know the exact placement of every red aviation beacon. I know the sharp, commanding steel angle of the apex tower 3 blocks east. Tonight, the apex tower is gone. I step back from the glass. My breath leaves a temporary, evaporating stain on the pane. A building does not simply vanish. Even in a total electrical failure, a 60-story skyscraper leaves a massive, physical silhouette blocking the ambient glow of the city behind it. If it had collapsed, there would be a towering cloud of pulverized concrete and a chaotic lattice of exposed steel. There is no rubble, there is no silhouette, there is an absence. Where the tower stood, there is a perfect, rectangular column of flat, matte gray. It defies optical physics. The gray possesses zero depth. It catches no light from the surrounding street lamps and casts no shadow. It is a void entirely devoid of texture, like a pristine strip of blank paper cut precisely into a photograph. The buildings situated directly behind where the apex tower used to be are now perfectly visible, their brick facades cleanly and sharply terminating at the exact border of the gray column. A heavy, suffocating pressure settles over my ribs. It is a scotoma, I tell myself, a neurological blind spot. My exhausted optic nerve is simply failing to process the visual data. The brain is substituting complex architecture with a placeholder. I tear my gaze away from the skyline. I need to anchor my vision on the immediate interior of my apartment. I need to look at something physical, something within arm's reach, to force my visual cortex to reset. I look toward the center of my living room. The moonlight spills across the hardwood, casting long, pale rectangles across the rug. In the center of the room sits my heavy oak coffee table. Resting on top of it is the ceramic water mug I left there an hour ago. I walk over my bare feet, registering the rough texture of the wool rug. I reach out to grab the mug. My fingers close around empty space. My hand passes cleanly through the space where the handle should be. I look closer, my vision swimming with vertigo. The mug is not ceramic. It is a flat, matte gray circle, perfectly two-dimensional, hovering precisely where the rim of the cup used to exist. My eyes dart downward to the coffee table beneath it. The rich, physical grain of the oak is gone. The 4 heavy wooden legs are gone. The entire table has been replaced by a featureless, matte gray silhouette, a perfect geometric cutout sitting in the middle of my living room. My chest heaves. I thrust my open palm downward, expecting the brutal, grounding impact of solid wood to stop my momentum. My arm sinks effortlessly through the gray void, disappearing completely up to the elbow. There is no temperature inside the gray. There is no friction against my skin. There is absolute mathematical nothingness. And as I stare at my severed bicep terminating into the flat gray rectangle, I notice a patch of the wool rug directly beneath my knees, slowly beginning to lose its color. I yank my arm upward. The limb emerges intact, the skin flush and shivering from the ambient chill of the apartment, but the space it occupied remains a flat, dead void. Beneath me, the intricate, woven pattern of the wool rug smooths out. The physical friction against my bare knees ceases to exist. I am no longer kneeling on fabric. I am resting on a two-dimensional plane. It offers no temperature, no texture, no resistance. It is merely the geometric concept of a floor, stripped of its physical reality. I scramble backward, my heels slipping wildly until my spine hits the solid plaster of the corridor wall. The cold shock of the drywall is a terrifying comfort. It is real. It is still rendered. From my position against the wall, I watch my living room degrade. It is not decaying, it is being aggressively simplified. The tall, cluttered bookshelf across the room loses its depth. The individual spines of the books merge, their varied colors draining in unison until the entire wooden structure is replaced by a towering, featureless gray monolith. The framed artwork on the walls flattens into blank rectangles. The physical mass of my life is being systematically deleted, bite by bite. I pull myself up, using the plaster for support, and look back through the floor-to-ceiling window. The deletion is multiplying across the city grid. Down on the avenue, the glowing orbs of headlights flatten into dull gray dashes. The cars themselves become rectangular voids, frozen on an asphalt road that is rapidly losing its porous texture. Entire city blocks are dropping out of visual existence, replaced by vast, intersecting planes of matte nothingness. The world is being optimized. The complexity of matter is taking up too much space, and an unseen architecture is clearing the cache. I cannot stay in the apartment. If the floor unrenders completely, there will be no physics left to support my weight. I lunge for the front door. My hand finds the heavy brass deadbolt. The metal is freezing against my palm. But as my skin maintains contact, the brass shifts, the metallic luster dulls, the freezing temperature evaporates into strict neutrality. The spherical geometry of the knob flattens into a perfect, two-dimensional gray circle. I try to pull my hand away, but the tactile feedback of my own flesh is gone. I look down at my fingers gripping the void. The contagion is not limited to the architecture. The intricate, spiraling ridges of my fingerprints are missing. The deep creases of my knuckles, the pores, the fine lines of my skin, they are wiping away. My fingers are rapidly smoothing out into flat, textureless gray polygons, the edges of my hand merging seamlessly into the unrendered geometry of the door. I pull my shoulder backward. The physics of my anatomy fail completely. My hand does not detach from the doorknob. Instead, the flat, matte gray polygon of my wrist simply stretches, elongating like a digital smear across a screen. There is no pain, there is no tearing of muscle or snapping of bone. There is only an absolute, sterile cessation of tactile feedback. The concept of my arm is being deleted. The gray contagion crawls rapidly up my forearm. It swallows the woven fabric of my sleeve, flattening the three-dimensional cylinder of my limb into a two-dimensional ribbon of empty space. I watch the boundary line of the unrendering pass over my elbow and sweep across my bicep. Where the gray touches, my physical mass ceases to exist. I am losing my depth. I am becoming an illustration. I stagger backward, dragging the flat, gray anchor of my arm with me. My knees buckle, but I do not hit the floor. The floor is already gone. I am suspended in a boundless, featureless gray void. The walls, the ceiling, the hallway, everything has been optimized into nothingness. The only object remaining in the entire apartment is the heavy pane of the floor-to-ceiling window, floating unsupported in the matte expanse. I drag my flattening body toward the glass. The deletion is spreading across my chest now. My breathing stops, not from suffocation, but because I no longer possess the internal geometry to hold air. My lungs have been unrendered. I press my remaining, fully rendered face against the cold glass of the floating window and look out at the city. There is no city. The sprawling metropolis, the grid of streets, the rivers, the bridges, the thousands of skyscrapers, is a single, infinite plane of flat, textureless gray. The entire world has been wiped clean to save space. But as my eyes scan the dead, matte horizon, I see a single point of intense, vibrant color. It is a window suspended miles away in the gray void. I focus entirely on that distant rectangle. The optical resolution is staggering, hyper-detailed, and perfectly rendered. Inside that distant window, I see a man in a softly lit bedroom. I see the rich, deep grain of his mahogany headboard. I see the heavy, textured fabric of his blanket. I see the condensation on a glass of water resting on his nightstand. He is sitting on the edge of his bed, looking out his window directly toward my coordinates. The horrifying, absolute truth of my existence clicks into place. I am not the center of this reality. I have never been real. My apartment, my insomnia, my 400 sleepless nights, they were never an independent life. I was nothing but procedural generation. I was an environmental asset, a heavily detailed piece of background architecture spawned into existence solely to provide a realistic, twinkling skyline for him to look at when he couldn't sleep. And now he is tired. In the distant, perfectly rendered room, the man reaches out and turns off his bedside lamp. He stands up, walks to his window, and grasps the edge of his heavy curtains. He does not need to look at the skyline anymore. The system no longer needs to waste the memory keeping my world rendered. I press my only remaining three-dimensional hand against the floating glass as the man miles away pulls the curtains shut. Instantly, the glass of my window flashes into matte gray. The unrendering washes over my neck, it sweeps up my jawline. It crosses my vision, flattening the depth of the world into absolute mathematical zero, deleting me quietly into the dark.